Hi, guys. Welcome back to Sustainability Podcast. Today, I am lucky enough to be hosting an alumna of Alliance, hence the green, an amazing lawyer. So allow me to introduce Nkatha Omondi. So Nkatha is a legal practitioner with over 14 years experience, and she's particularly passionate about renewable energy projects, carbon offsets, and climate change law. She was formerly a partner at ENS Africa and now currently runs her own law firm. And the best part about this is she's one of Africa's top 100 women lawyers and Kenya's top 100 commercial lawyers. So today I can confidently say and ask Wakili a quick one on sustainability issues. Karibu, Nkatha.
Thank you very much.
You want to introduce yourself a bit further?
Yes.
Why environmental sustainability? What's made you go into that field?
So primarily, I'm an energy lawyer. I started off at the geothermal development company. And as it goes, most of the energy projects now require, or rather, most of the developers of energy projects want to get carbon credits as an additional financing stream. And so I found myself being pushed into the carbon space. So I started that at the Kaplan and Stratton Advocates, as well as ENS Africa. And now I run my own firm called A&N Legal Advocates LLP.
All right. So you've mentioned something very interesting, the carbon part. I think we've been hearing quite a bit about carbon credits. Is it greenwashing, or what is carbon credits? Like everyone is saying it, the government is saying it, socials. So could you tell us what's the definition? What is carbon credits?
Carbon credits and greenwashing are two different things. We'll get to that. So carbon credits are basically, think of something like a share certificate. It's a tradable certificate that represents the either removal of 1 metric ton of carbon from the atmosphere, or the avoidance of the emission of 1 ton of carbon or a greenhouse gas into the atmosphere. So it's basically a certificate that represents the removal of or avoidance of introduction of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere.
Okay. Just because I mentioned greenwashing, so what are the misconceptions that people have about carbon credits that you've had in your line of work?
First, greenwashing refers to situations where companies make claims around removal of carbon from the atmosphere which are not true or substantiated or are exaggerated or have not been verified. So that's what you call greenwashing. So that's it's a criminal arm of the carbon credits thing.
So that's a first misconception about carbon credits.
Misconception, yeah. Yes. So there's a lot of misconception around carbon credits being a scam because of a few unscrupulous people who have done weird, naughty things around carbon credits. Another misconception in Kenya is that it's a get-rich-quick scheme. It is not. It takes up to from 2 to 5 years to get your carbon credit, your carbon project running. It has to be verified. It has to be audited by international bodies. And so it's not a get-rich-quick scheme, as has been said in most forums. If you let me, Another misconception is that carbon credits are leading to neocolonialism and land grabs, which is not true because the ownership of the land does not move. And it's quite clear under the laws of Kenya that if you are getting to a land-based carbon project, then you must enter into a community agreement, an agreement with the community so that you share the benefits of the carbon credits with the community. So it's not a land grab per se, or has been fronted.
Okay, interesting. So maybe on when you're at the malls and we're only seeing people with the sign-up sheets of plant this tree or give towards this particular project. I've never been offered carbon credits in a mall to buy so what are these investment opportunities? Because we're seeing more it's targeted towards what I feel are large organizations. So is it just meant for that kind of space, or can SMEs? If I had a small business and I want to buy carbon credits to offset, or me as Liz and I want to have some in my portfolio, or to say this is what I'm doing as a person? Is that like accessible? And what are the investment opportunities around carbon credits?
So when you talk about investment in carbon credits, you have to distinguish between the development side of carbon credits and the buy side of carbon credits. What you have described is the buy side of carbon credits. Anyone can buy carbon credits for whatever need they have. Most entities buy carbon credits to offset their personal goals. So basically, maybe a company has decided they're going to have net zero emissions. And so they might not do that within their main line of work, but they will go and buy carbon credits to offset the current emissions that they have. So that might be a promise they've made to their shareholders, or they're trying to meet their ESG requirements, or they have a sustainability linked loan. So they're trying to meet another need that they have, or goal that they have set for themselves. That's on the buy side. Anyone can buy carbon credits for whatever reason that they need them. However, on the development side, what you've said is right. It's mostly geared towards larger organizations, mostly because of the resources that are required to invest into a carbon project. To get clearance for a carbon project to develop the carbon credits, to generate carbon credits, it takes 2 to 5 years. And it could range from, in terms of cost, from USD 100,000 to 800,000, depending on who the foreign experts you use are going to be. It's very, can I say, lopsided, because most of the technical experts who are needed are not based in Kenya or Africa for that matter. They're international experts, and they're using international matrices to gauge whether the project will make sense or not. You have to do a feasibility study. You have to have consultants to tell you whether it's going to work or not. You have to have consultants to actually help you, develop the project. So on that side, the development of the carbon projects is heavily time intensive and money intensive. And you'll find many small corporations are not able to meet those two resources. So you'll find it's been left to the bigger organizations.
Okay. So why is it that we don't have any local experts? Like, I think we have quite a bit, if it's in terms of academia, we have quite a bit of, I think people who would be able to do it. Is it that it's not being offered here, or is it something that, like you keep saying, it's been brought by the West to Africa? So why are there no consultants that are based off Kenya? And also, if the metrics are being based off like international kind of standards, how does it play into the local context?
So for the first part, the concept of carbon credits is not an African creation. Mm-hmm. It started with the Kyoto Protocol and now the Paris Agreement. So these are solutions to climate change which have been promulgated outside of Africa. And in that space, the terminology, the methodologies which are used to gauge carbon projects are all foreign-based. So we have introduced a foreign concept into Africa. And as you've said, some of the matrices are based on international or foreign policies. So when you apply them even in the Kenyan concept, some of them don't make sense. So we need to now find a way of breaking it down and have matrices which are maybe more African. But in that space, there's also the integrity of the carbon credits. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of greenwashing going around. And some of the carbon projects which have been called out are unfortunately African. And this has led to a lot of questioning on the integrity of African carbon credits, which has also now affected the pricing of carbon credits, because a big company like Netflix or Amazon might buy carbon credits from Africa and then later find out that there was some sexual or social misdemeanors which are being done by the companies which are underlying. So you'll find there's a lot of integrity questions as to the value of carbon credits generated in Africa. That's why they have to now be tested against international standards, which is unfortunate. But in that space, we do need to create African matrices to gauge whether the carbon projects are going to generate viable carbon credits.
Okay. In terms of, you've mentioned credibility quite a bit. So what if I wanted to, like you said, anyone can buy and invest in carbon credits just to offset what I use. What would I use as a means of measuring credibility of a company or an organization that is selling these carbon credits? So either as an individual or even if it's a company that I own.
Okay, so for a start, during the process of creating carbon credits, you have to first go through the development phase where the developer actually just, strategizes and sees what type of project they want to enter into. Then the second phase is verification, which is now done by an independent third party who looks at your project and assesses to see whether it actually makes sense. And in that space, there is now the methodologies that have to be followed and met. So that's the first check on your integrity of your carbon credits. And the third stage is the registration of your carbon credits. So once your carbon project is running and you've now generated your carbon credits, there's a register of your carbon credits, which is now also run by another independent body, let's say Vera or a gold standard. So think of your ISO standard certification or your KEBS certification. That's the type of certification your carbon credits get. So you have your Vera or your gold standard. Those are the most common in Kenya at the moment. So once you have that mark of certification, that's another angle of ascertaining the credibility of your carbon credits. These bodies are on top of just having the carbon registry. They have to keep checking and monitoring whether your project is actually meeting the requirements that you had said it would meet and, actually producing and doing the things that it said it would do. That's the second arm that you could use to verify your carbon credits. And the third one, which is also an interesting one, is that you're getting independent third-party verifiers, or can I say auditors, of the carbon credits. So these are people who are coming now just check independently and say whether or not these carbon credits are worth the paper they are, or rather the registry they're from. So these third-party verifiers are, it's dangerous because it's like, Standard & Poor, that type of people who come and say independently, this carbon standard is good, this carbon standard is bad, this is the problem with this registry. They are international, they are independent, as I've said earlier, and that means that they may or may not have all taken everything into consideration, especially from the Kenyan context. So that's the third angle of the people who can verify your carbon credit.
Yeah. Okay, so that's from someone who's at a developer's side of you, but not from a buyer. So as a buyer, what would I be looking at? Like just the two things. If I go like on a website, what are those 2 or 3 things that?
First of all, as a buyer, it's not that simple because you can buy credits directly from the developer or you can buy credits through a broker. But before you buy the credit, you have to first figure out who has verified these, under which standard are these carbon credits issued. So if it's under Vera, you can go into the Vera website and now check and see. It's quite technical, though. I'm not sure, a layman would be able to check and assess whether all the things have been met. But you'll be looking at the standard under which this carbon credit has been issued. There's also a proposal. It's not really a proposal. The law has already been passed to get a Kenyan registry for the carbon credits. And before the carbon credits under that registry are issued, you have to have an ESIA, environmental, social, and impact assessment. So you will have some comfort that these carbon credits are not being in breach of the community's rights or the landowner's rights. Yeah.
Okay. And then now just from like an SME perspective, would you recommend, because we've had a previous guest talking about the normal way of like reforestation and giving back to, just like, because the country right now, we're all tree growing and tree planting. We have holidays for it. So would you like recommend, if I came to you as a client and I'm like, oh, this is what I want to do to as part of my ESG, would you recommend carbon credits or more traditional ways of offsetting carbon?
Well, a lot of SMEs are buying carbon credits as part of their project to meet their targets, as I said earlier. But another way for SMEs to be involved, because some SMEs are, they're now interested in generating the carbons themselves, the carbon credits themselves. And so what we see them doing is because of, I had said earlier, it's very time consuming and it's very expensive to generate carbon, to get into carbon projects. We have aggregators of carbon credits. So they'll get many small SMEs who are doing something small in one area, aggregate those credits and have them verified and registered under that aggregator's name. So you'll have, just think of how you do the milk and KCC. So you have aggregators of different carbon projects and with similar platforms coming to one aggregator. That's one way of doing it. Another way that SMEs are entering into the development space are they do pre-financing. So you already have a buyer at the end who will finance you into, as you're getting your verification and you're getting your registration. So even as you're getting into the project as an SME, you might not have the time. You do have the time, but you don't have the money. You get someone to buy your carbon credits in advance. Then we also have some tech disruptors who are in the market who are now creating platforms for SMEs to actually sell whatever little credits they have directly to the buyers. Because now there are so many middlemen at the moment, and most of the buyers are unfortunately international. So you have Netflix, Amazon, the big guys who are buying the carbon credits. So you have these tech disruptors who have come and created platforms, like think of Tinder, between the buyer and the seller of the carbon credits. Then they've created mobile payment platforms so that you can have just, direct payments into. So you'll have Tinder and M-Pesa combined for your sale of your carbon credits. So let's see how that goes.
Okay, it's interesting. Okay. Now, apart from the very technical bit, as a professional like you, of course, when you went to your career as a lawyer, you didn't really think you'd go into environmental law. So what has been your inspiration to focus your career on sustainability, kind of that impact space? Is that something that's like happened to you in your childhood and you're like, I need to fix this world? Or are you just like those people who are born, like Wangari Maathai is deep inside you and your roots? Like what inspired you into this line of work? And yeah.
I always grew up knowing I want to help people, which is I think also one of the reasons I joined you at the Rotary. But something more personal that happened was my grandmother passed away from having smoker's lungs. My grandmother, who's never smoked a cigarette in her life. This was because of cooking with firewood. And it came so close to home at that moment because I realized how many other elderly women or people living in the rural areas are going to be affected by this directly. And it's all a matter of clean cooking, So we have to now educate our people into the dangers of, cooking with firewood and give them solutions, workable solutions for clean cook stoves, maybe reduce the impact of that on the environment. Something else I've seen lately is the floods in Nairobi, like 2 months ago. That really came home to me because we always talk about climate justice. The people who, or rather the countries that have caused the most damage to the environment are the countries the countries which are facing the biggest impact of climate change are the developing countries. So the biggest droughts and the floods are all affecting the developing world. And whereas the developed world does not seem to be in a hurry to correct the problems. And there's also arguments that some of the countries in the developing world also want to use those same mechanisms, the brown activities to develop themselves. So something has to change because us in Kenya, we're already facing the biggest effect of climate change.
Okay. And then maybe just your call to action to, I think, anyone listening, either it's government, individual SMEs, like how do we take ownership of this conversation? Like you said, most of this carbon credits is coming from a foreign perspective. So how can we practically take ownership of these conversations? Is there a regulator we could write to ensure we understand? I know we're now a maandamano season, we're occupying everything. So is there something that is happening that could inform us better? Can you be part of that voice to ensure that it's actually serving the people like, your late grandmother and everyone else you've spoken about, even the flood victims recently?
So what I'd say is do the little that you can wherever you are. As a country, we are trying. I think we're among the countries at the forefront in the African space in terms of legislation. We recently have our Climate Change Act, which was amended to now include the carbon credit provisions. Our the carbon credit, there's a trading bill which is out. I'm not sure how that will work with the Climate Change Act. We have some regulations which came out which are now going to inform how the carbon market will run and how the carbon market will operate. We have the CMA also, which has come out and said it wants to try and regulate the carbon markets. We have the NSC, which has now wants to issue some rules around, the carbon trading within its market, and it wants to now create a carbon market exchange segment. So that should be interesting. So there's something for everyone to do in their little space. There are over 170 projects which could generate carbon credits. So this range from clean cook stoves, renewable energy projects. This could be your afforestation, reforestation, agriculture. And somehow we don't have any projects in agriculture, which is strange because we are primarily an agricultural country. There's also the hope that we'll be. I had our president say that he wants us to be the largest exporter. Our largest export to be carbon credits. So there's a lot of space in there to create and generate carbon credits and do the right thing for the environment, not just focus on carbon credits.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. I think I feel very, very informed. So I think I can use now greenwashing with the right way. I think I've been using it for everything. I'm like, that's greenwashing. So I think a bit more insights. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation. Would you, in case someone wants to maybe get in contact with, I guess, your law firm, you can just share your details at the website, or if you have social media pages, and they could be in touch just to maybe have a larger conversation. Maybe they want to buy credits or develop. You seem to know your stuff, so you can let us know. You can look at the camera and just let us know how they can find you.
Okay. So if you're looking for us, I'm Nkatha Omondi at AN Legal Advocates LLP. You could find us on our website. We're available also on LinkedIn. So you could just look us up and see how we can help you in this carbon credit and project development space.
Thank you so much, Nkatha. We are so excited to have learned so much about carbon credits and the frameworks that are available. And we look forward to seeing you next time on the Sustainability Podcast. Bye. Thank you.